Hello, hello. Your neighbor, your friendly neighborhood cougar here. What to talk about? My wife just got home from a little walk around the block, and she talks to the neighbors, and she's she's pretty consistent about how talking to people about how we really just have one problem. It's not homelessness. It's not inflation. It's not the economy. It's not the interest rates. It's not personal debt. It's not any of those things. I mean, those things are personal problems, but we collectively have one problem. We just have one problem, and that's global heating. Now, I've said that many times on this channel, and I will keep saying it over and over again because that's reality. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. I mean, you can argue with that or quibble with that or say, but yeah, it's a problem, but we got bigger problems over here. We got bigger problems over there. This is the master problem. Well, global heating is the master problem. And as it proceeds, meaning as things get hotter, okay, as the impacts of the heating become more relevant, widespread, intense, anomalous, right? As we can't cope anymore, it's just our ability to cope just becomes eroded, right? As things just get worse and worse and worse, which they must. These laws of physics are in control of the trajectory of this, okay? The laws of physics. Wow. Cope, deal with that. Just there's your reality. But as it keeps getting worse and worse, people are going to find it increasingly difficult to say that, we have a big, long list of problems. So many problems. We don't even know where to start, right? Everyone has their little pet problem. It's the LGBTQ rights. It's the collapse of education. It's the AIG or the AGI or the AAI or whatever it's called, right? Artificial intelligence. And slowly they're just going to recognize they have one existential crushing problem, and that's that the planet is heating up. Now, my last video, I talked about how crazy the planet is heating up. This is just off the charts. It's just crazy. It's just completely crazy. Maybe it's termination shock, as I mentioned, from the reduction in the aerosol masking effect. That could possibly account for it. People knew that was out there. That was looming. That's a thing. There was a lot of theories about how severe it would be, how quickly it would come on. A lot of people said, as long as we keep burning fossil fuels, we won't have termination shock. But we went into, it looks to me like we went into termination shock anyway. So, wow, that was unexpected. And so here we are in the middle of a massive experiment. We are about global average temperature, which I don't like focusing on. It's just a red herring, but we'll talk about it because that's all we're going to talk about all summer. The global average temperature is now approaching, it probably has already exceeded as of today, 2.0 degrees C above baseline, which was not supposed to happen for 50 years. And here we are, we're doing it. Will we drop below it? Yeah, we might, but we might not. Okay, so here we are. We're there. We're there. We don't know what the future holds. We have no idea what's going to happen. And if this is happening now because of termination shock, well, then all bets are off the table. Okay, we don't know. We just don't know. We don't know. And they'll tell you, oh, it'll be a bit better. It'll reverse. El Nino will end. Sunspots something will happen there, and then it's the AMOC, and there'll be changes, and it'll all fix itself, and it'll go back down, and don't have to worry. Don't scare the children, for God's sake, right? Yeah, really? You think all that? That's all you got? That's what you've got. You've got hope. Okay. Well, hope dies here, right here on this channel, right here with me. Your situation is hopeless at this point. I mean, if you want to have hope and actually ingest hope and mood enhancing drugs, go right ahead. That's what it takes. Fine. But hope ends here. We're done. I'm telling you, the situation is hopeless. Now, my wife was talking to a neighbor, and most of our neighbors, rich white people, right? What are you going to do? Most of our neighbors are denialists, straight up, not happening. If it happens, it's a good thing, and it's not happening. And if it happens, it's a hoax, and it's the Chinese that are doing it. It's both a hoax, not happening, and the Chinese are doing it. So pick a lane, okay? But no, it's both, and it's not happening. Okay. Uh, Rich white people, what do you expect? So, and he was having more of a conversation with her about it. It's like, yep, yep, it's bad. So, all right, something is happening in the world, and people, okay, sample size of one, but I know our neighborhood. And a year ago, you couldn't have had that conversation with that guy, period. Straight up, you could not have had that conversation with that guy. And if you go along with the 100th monkey hypothesis, then this guy, he's just an average guy, and there must be hundreds of people now in this community who are on board with the statement that, yeah, it's real, and it's a quandary. It is. It is a quandary. Look up the trolley problem. Look up the trolley problem. I'm not going to discuss it much here, except to point out that what this guy said was, my wife was talking to him, is what this guy said is what nearly everybody says. And this is kind of the final analysis of the trolley problem, is that when people realize you can have a disaster by doing nothing. Okay, that's really bad. Can I do something? Well, you can do something. You can pull a lever and put your trolley, your train on another track that's over here. But there's also a bad thing over there, and people die this way, and people die over on that side track too. But they're different. They're different scenarios. It's not exactly the same. Or you would say, well, what's the point of having the handle where I could change my track? Well, over here is one type of disaster, and straight ahead is another type of disaster. And if you pull the lever, you choose the disaster over here on the side. Okay. And what people do is they just don't pull the lever. They do nothing. That's what happens. And the reason why they don't do nothing, the reason why people don't do nothing during a disaster, during a looming disaster, a disaster that is on, it's just ahead of us. Okay. It's on this track. We're on this track. Business as usual. We're on this track. And we see up ahead, wow, look at that. That's a disaster. Okay. The reason they don't do anything is they don't want to be blamed for it. It has a little bit to do also with the bystander problem, the bystander mentality, where someone's being beat down in the curb and could be they're going to die or be seriously injured, and you could get involved. But if you get involved, you might get hurt. And if you just walk away, then you don't get hurt. And furthermore, because you didn't put that person in that situation, and because you didn't get involved, and you're just walking down your sidewalk like this, it's not your problem. It's what I call it is, it's not that you choose not to engage. You don't choose at all. You just avert your gaze and just walk down the sidewalk. You're not even choosing not to choose. You're just going down the sidewalk. Well, that's what you were doing a minute ago, and now you're just going to keep doing that. You're totally disengaged. So what he was pointing out was, if we stop doing what we're doing now, business as usual, there's going to be terrible things happen over here on this other track. And we pull the lever and get ourselves off of fossil fuels, which is what our current situation seems to require. That puts us on another track. Kind of a lot of unknowns over there, right? We've never really lived our modern civilization without fossil fuels, so it's a lot of unknowns if we go on this other track without fossil fuels. But worse, there are going to be things happen over there. What if civilization collapses? What if people die? What if the children? What if the horses? I mean, animal rights and whatever, LGBTQ, what if all that stuff doesn't work over here on this side track without fossil fuels? So we'll just go down this track we're on, and we'll burn the fossil fuels, and we'll take whatever the hit is. We'll just take it. We'll just take the hit. That's it. We just don't choose. We're just going down the sidewalk like this. I see nothing. I know nothing. I feel nothing. And whatever happens, then that's what's going to happen. We'll just take the hit. We take the hit. We choose. We choose by not choosing. By not choosing, we just allow the thing to happen. Whatever it is that is in our future. Choosing not to choose. That's what people do. That's the psychology of, I don't want to do without. I don't even want my neighbor to do without. I don't want my kids to do without. I don't want to be the one who votes that someone has to do without. I don't want to see people doing without and knowing that that's my fault. I don't want to know that by turning off fossil fuels, some group of people couldn't feed themselves anymore. I just don't want, I can't deal with it. I just won't choose. And, and I'll put, dark film over my windows so I can't see out, and I'll turn off all my internets, and I will, I'll just watch funny cat videos on the internet, and I just won't know. I just won't know. I'll never go outside. I'll have my Amazon Prime deliver what I need. It all comes to the door. I open the door. I take the things inside. I close the door. I don't have to engage. We just go forward, and we get our fossil fuels. We burn the fossil fuels, and we just go forward. And we just divert our eyes. He basically said that we can't not burn fossil fuels. It'll be terrible. Yeah, but you can't go forward either. It'll be terrible. And so now this is where I introduce the distinction between an uncontrolled demolition and a controlled demolition. What's a demolition? So old buildings get knocked down, and we bring in specialists, experts who know how to blow up a building and how to bring down a building. That's called a controlled demolition. They use explosives. They're going to bring this building down. They're going to bring it down. It's going to fall in a certain way, but it's going to fall in a controlled way. In the end, there's no building. The building is destroyed, but it's a controlled demolition. And you can do that in your life as well. You could say, all right, today I'm going to give up cigarettes, and I'm going to do it slowly, or I'm going to do it cold turkey, but you're in control. You've made that decision. And so you're going to give up cigarettes. And then, because it's a controlled experiment in your life, you can surround yourself with support. Everyone else is fine. You're the one who's going through withdrawal. So you surround yourself with people who are supportive. You surround yourself with supportive images and memes. You maybe you get medications, whatever kind of withdrawal you're going to go through. And of course you consult with authorities, and they tell you, okay, to get off of tobacco, you have to do this, and to get off of heroin, you have to do that, and it's all under control, right? You might even have a physician helping you monitor your throwing off this addiction, and then you go into addiction management. And it's a controlled demolition. You're in a controlled environment. You know it's going to hurt. It's going to be embarrassing. It's going to be humiliating. People are going to react strangely to you. You're going to react to them. Your life is going to be topsy-turvy. But at the end, you've taken care of your addiction. That's your goal, right? Your goal is not to suffer. Our goal in getting ourselves off of addiction is not to suffer. Wow, I sure would like to suffer. And here I am, I'm addicted to heroin. So I'll just set myself up to suffer. That's not the goal. The goal is to get off of your addiction. Now, we, civilization, 8,000 million humans, okay, do I have to explain all this again? Our civilization is addicted to fossil fuels, straight up, pure and simple. Addicted to fossil fuels, can't survive without it. Can't survive without it. And if you try to survive without it, you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer. Some people more than others. Some people are more dependent than others. And some people will feel the pain more than others. They really like driving the car. They really like vacationing 4 times a year to Disneyland. They really like flying to Hawaii 3 times a year. They just like these things, and they get endorphins, and they're addicted to the happy fuzzies, right? And if they don't get these things, they're going to have actual withdrawal. They're going to be angry. They're going to be disappointed. Their marriage will end. I mean, if people don't get the things they want, the 4 times a year to Hawaii, okay? The third facelift, the whatever, the Disneyland. If they don't get the things they feel like they need, then they go into withdrawal. It's actual withdrawal. They have withdrawal symptoms from these things. So removing the fossil fuels, that's going to hurt a lot. Some people, it's going to hurt them so much that they end up killing themselves, or their whole families, or everyone in their school. We know how it is. People are hurting even as it is. With all the fossil fuels they can burn, people are in big trouble. Guns everywhere, addiction everywhere, broken families. You want to blame it on the immigrants, go right ahead, but you're going to find out that's not your problem. Your problem is your dependency on fossil fuels. You're just going 6 directions all at once. It's like being high on methamphetamines. You're just going 6 directions all at once, and you're addicted to it. And yet we have to stop burning fossil fuels. We have to do that. And if we don't choose to do it, it will be done unto us when the situation simply becomes untenable. So that's going to hurt. There's a lot of pain and suffering due ahead for us. And I think people are starting to notice. And when you come along and you say, well, global heating, fossil fuels, we're going to have to stop burning fossil fuels. Rather than just poo-pooing you as a crank, another hippie, ha, 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 You're so cute. Pat on the head. Now go away. Okay. Instead of doing that, they're beginning to internalize this slowly. Everything is slow. People take a long time. Why is that? I don't know. Laziness, selfishness. Go figure. It takes them a long time to recognize that they're in a bad place. And now they're starting to think about, how bad is this place? Well, we're going to stop burning fossil fuels. Well, that's not me. They see what happens. They start to make choices. And they start making choices for other people. That's how this happens. Privilege brings its privileges, doesn't it? Okay, so I'm not going to stop burning fossil fuels. I grant you, we are burning too many fossil fuels, and that's changing the atmosphere, and it's heating the planet and causing climate change. And yeah, I get all that. Supply chain problems and crop failures and droughts, and sometimes the opposite of a drought, too much water. And I get that. I get that. Yeah. So someone's going to have to burn less fossil fuels. Yeah, I get that, but it's not me. I got mine. I got mine. I need mine. These other people don't need it. So why don't they stop? Um, yeah, okay. However, it is the rich, privileged Northern Hemisphere, in particular, Eurasia and North America, that are doing that. We're the ones burning the fossil fuels. Primitive Stone Age tribesmen in sub-Saharan Africa are not burning fossil fuels. Or hardly nothing. Look what they got. They got nothing. And we got everything. And here in America, we have like 15 times more than even people in Europe. Oh, we got a lot going on here, people. All created by fossil fuels. So if someone's going to have to give it up or reduce it by 90% or more, then who's that going to be? You don't you don't save yourself by global heating by depriving sub-Saharan Africans of their access to fossil fuels. Okay, no, you don't make a dent. You don't even have it's not even a blip. You can't even register it. It doesn't even. It's like the third decimal place is their contribution to the problem. It's in the third decimal place. So if you're going to actually save yourself, meaning here I am, privileged white person living in a wealthy white community in a wealthy white city in a wealthy white part of a state that's full of wealthy white people in a country that identifies as wealthy and white, and and we're the ones doing this. We're the ones doing it. We're doing this, right? We're doing this. Then when we say, well, someone else has to do it, it's going to be someone else besides me. Here, someone who just drove by my house out here is going to have to stop driving by my house. They're burning fossil fuels. So I don't know. What do we do? Do we just stop cars at random on the freeway, like at the toll booth, right? Where you go through the toll booth, and you're supposed to pay your $3, and we drag them out of their car? We drag them out of the car, confiscate their car, confiscate their driver's license, and say, okay, lucky you just won the negative detrimental lottery. We're pulling you out of your car. We're going to scrap your car, take your driver's license. You can walk home from here, buckwheat. Okay. And by the way, now you can't go to your job. Your boss is going to have to get by with fewer employees because you're done. I mean, we could do that. You say, well, that's terrible. I don't say it's good. I'm saying we could do that. And let's have someone, Steven Spielberg, I'd help him. I'd write the screenplay for him. I could figure this out for you, Steven. Let's do a screenplay for a movie where that's exactly what happens. And then we have to figure out, okay, so what is it? How do we edge into this? Well, it could be 1 in 100 drivers, maybe 1 in 1,000 to start with. Or maybe we just pick out the speeders. Just pick out the people that are kind of screwing up, or anybody who hits another car. Both those cars leave the roadway. Oh, and we take your driver's license, and we cancel your insurance, and you get redlined. You don't get to buy a new car. You got involved in a car accident. You're done. Okay, we can say that. But I didn't hit him. He hit me. It doesn't matter. You're done. Because we need volunteers for this. All right. So we could do it that way. And then in the script, of course, it just gets worse and worse. And pretty soon, when you're going through the toll booth and you're wondering if it's your turn, because it's like 1 in 20, right? We could do that. And so people who are going to work and people who are driving every day because they're going through the toll booth, why else would you go through a toll booth and pay $3 unless you do this every day, right? Okay. So, and we just pull these cars off the road. Pretty soon there's hardly any cars on the road. That's how you could do it. But the businesses, no, that's not in the script, caring about the businesses. But think of the children. Yeah, well, people are going to suffer. That's in the script. That was right there in the first 10 minutes of the movie. People are going to suffer. Yeah, we accepted that. Who's going to suffer then? Someone's got to volunteer, or we're going to have to pick people at random. So this is an uncontrolled demolition. This is just taking the pain, just going forward, burning the fossil fuels, and just suffering and humiliation and police state tactics, and just an uncontrolled demolition, chaos. That's what we're kind of signing up for, because when you're saying, there's no good solution to this, and I don't want to stop, and my life is pretty good, and I feel I earned this. I mean, I voted, I worked, I sent my kids to college, and we did all the right things. We checked all the boxes, privileged, we're white, we're wealthy, we're retired, we got a home, and our kids went to college, and they got married, and they married, cisgender, and they did all the things, and uh and everything's great, right? So we're good. Why do we have to stop burning fossil fuels? We're the good people, and that's going to be the attitude. Now, if we choose, we won't. But if we were to choose, I'm putting this out there because I want you to understand what we're not going to get. What we're not going to get. If we don't choose a controlled demolition, which we won't, we will not choose a controlled demolition. No one's going to choose that. It's not going to be imposed on us. Politicians are cowards and morons, and they think that they have bigger problems than global heating. Well, you're just a nerdy scientist. What do you know? Yeah, I know how the laws of physics work. Okay. So you got one problem. And if you were on the Titanic, your one problem is gravity. You're sinking, and you will go beneath the waves, and you're going to die. Okay. And no, the fact that you didn't finish your dinner or your cup of coffee is not your problem. The fact that you didn't get to New York on time is not your problem. The fact that, you didn't get to take advantage of your first class ticket to your satisfaction is not your problem. Your problem is gravity. All right. Yes, that's what made the Titanic sink. What made the Titanic sink wasn't the iceberg or the water coming in. It was gravity. Physics. It was physics. Okay. Physics made the Titanic sink, dragged it to the bottom of the sea because it lost buoyancy, dragged it to the bottom of the sea. And what's going to destroy you because of global heating is physics. You can argue with it if you want to, but physics is the thing. Physics is the thing. So here's what we're not going to get, because we refuse to accept a controlled demolition. In a controlled demolition, we elect as adults to stop burning fossil fuels. We recognize that the biggest problem we face is that the earth will become uninhabitable for human life, by and large, if we keep doing what we're doing. We decide we're not going to go over the Seneca Cliff in an uncontrolled manner. We are going to have a controlled descent. We realize there's going to be pain and suffering, and we're going to try and spread it as widely as we can, understanding that people with privilege can actually handle a lot more pain and suffering than people without. And the people with privilege recognize they're going to have to share. See, there's a lot of steps we have to go through to get to where this can even happen. And you can see there's lots of places in this narrative where it just doesn't happen. The privileged people just don't decide to share. The privileged people just don't accept that they're going to suffer something along with everyone else when they're suffering. The privileged people just refuse to participate. There's lots of ways that this comes unhinged, and we veer suddenly back into a uncontrolled demolition. But let's just say something, a miracle happens, right? Whatever. Christ Jesus descends from heaven and says, "Thou shalt," right? Whatever it takes. A new drug, hopium. Hopium actually becomes a drug, and everyone takes hopium. All of a sudden, they know what to do, right? A miracle happens. We give up on fossil fuels. We do it deliberately. And maybe we deliberately phase it down. We give ourselves, some runway. We're going to phase it down gradually at first, and then more intently. We'll give people a chance to kind of feel their way through their life, and we're also going to educate them without copious amounts of fossil fuels, which, by the way, means no copious amounts of fossil fuels means no reduction of any kind. Maybe we could get by without a constant annual increase in consumption of fossil fuels. Maybe I don't know. That's we need constant annual increases in fossil fuel consumption, and we've been getting those pretty reliably for 100 years. But we're going to imagine a scenario where not only do we not get copious annual increases in consumption of fossil fuels, we actually get some decrease, maybe 5% a year. And maybe at first it's 5% a year, and then later it becomes like 20% a year. So we're going to accelerate this once people get on board. They're on board. They're working that muscle. And the first couple of years is 5% a year reduction, and then they're on board. They're like, "Yeah, I can do this. I'm in the marathon. I feel good. I hit my beat. Okay, I'm hitting my beat. We're decreasing fossil fuels every year. 5% last year, 5% this year. Next year's going to be 10%. I'm on it. It's the burn. The burn is going to feel the burn." Feel the burn. Let's do this. Okay. So we work into it slowly, and pretty soon we work into it a lot, right? We have to accelerate because we got to get off of this stuff like toot sweet really fast. So as that happens, people's lives and their dependency on fossil fuels begin to implode. It's going to happen in phases. But the governments know this. The governments know that some people are already kind of living on the edge. They can barely afford their house payment. They can barely afford their credit card bills. They can barely keep the job they have. Their kids aren't working out well in school. It's too much stress. Their neighborhoods are already, really close to being anarchic and chaotic. Okay, everything's kind of on the edge. So the governments, because the governments are in on this, right? They say, okay, we know some people and some families and some whole communities are going to fail first. They're going to go into catastrophic decline. They're not going to be in the marathon. I'm in my groove. I can do this. I can do the 25 miles, whatever it's going to be. I can do this. I'm fit. I'm ready. I've got privilege. I've got money. I've got cash. I've got solar power. I've got whatever I need. I can do this. Let's do this. There's a lot of people don't have anything, and they're going to collapse the soonest. So the governments can see this. And during a controlled demolition, the governments could say, okay, right. We have to set up interventions. We have to set up. Going to need a lot of therapists. We're going to need a lot of programs to give people support, and programs to give people a vision for where this is all headed. We're going to have to institute some universal basic income for the people who lose their jobs immediately. We're going to give them support, maybe free housing, right? Maybe free food, just whatever it takes to keep people from completely spinning out and killing everyone in the family, right? And then, of course, as you go deeper into fewer fossil fuels, it starts to bite. It begins to bite deeper and deeper into the community. It bites. And people are losing their jobs, and jobs are disappearing. Businesses that were reliant on fossil fuels they don't have them, or they don't have enough, or they're not cheap enough. And that's the other thing you do is you raise the price of fossil fuels. So we send a signal to people. This is you have to stop doing this. And it's going to be price of gas is $5 this year. Well, we have a schedule. We're guaranteeing you that on January 1st of next year, the price of gas is going to be no less than $7. And the year after that, it's calendars. It's all on the calendar. And the year after that, the price of gas will be no less than 10. Okay, we're going to ramp it up. We're going to ramp it up. This is coming. Okay, it's all on the calendar. We talk about this all the time. We got billboards, PSAs out there all the time saying, on January 1st of this year, it's going to be the price of gas is going to be no lower than that. And on January 1st of the following year, the price of gas is no lower than that. You let them know. You tell them this is not an accident. This is not a conspiracy. This is not, us trying to destroy your life. We're telling you in advance. We're telling you in advance. We've got to do this. The government could do that. How could a government possibly do that? That's like a police state. No, this is a controlled demolition. We're bringing this thing down. We're going to bring it down. Yes, there's pain. Yes, there's suffering. Yes, there's humiliation and embarrassment. You lost your job. You lost your whatever, and you got 2 other families living in your house now, whatever it is, whatever it takes. We're going to do this together. We're going to pull together. We're going to become a community. We're going to figure this out together. We're going to do a controlled demolition. Now, here is the schedule. Price of gas, year. Okay. Uh, uh, Cars sold per state, here and here and here, and the bottom is zero, and there's a schedule. So if you need a different car than what you have for the next couple of years, when all of a sudden gasoline is $10 a gallon, well, get out there and get it. Figure it out. You've got a few years in which to buy a car which doesn't burn 6 miles to the gallon, and maybe you can give yourself a longer runway. But that's your choice. Otherwise, you could just say, okay, if that's what it's going to be, then I'm in. I'm all in. I'm going to stop burning fossil fuels. I'm going to stop driving. I'm going to stop flying. I don't get Disneyland trips anymore. I'm not going to get to go to Hawaii because that's flying and it's driving. And who needs Disneyland anyway? Okay, we're on a war footing here. We're on a war footing. We're doing a controlled demolition. For fuck's sake, what do you mean Disneyland? Shut that place down. How many watts? How many megawatts does it take to run that place on a daily basis? Couldn't we use that electricity for something else? Powering people's homes? How about that? How about free electricity in the vicinity of Disneyland? We shut down Disneyland, and all that electricity that used to go to Disneyland, for fuck's sake, we give to the people around it for free. Just give it to them. We're just trying to prepare people for what's coming. You shut down Disneyland. Fuck them. Fuck them sideways. Shut them down. The airport, you don't need to fly anywhere. If you've got a private jet, then I guess you've got your private airfield too, right? So the international airports, shut them down. You're not going anywhere. Why are you flying somewhere? What's wrong with where you are? Oh, you got a business deal? Okay, then do it through a Zoom call. Do it remotely. Do it on the fucking telephone, fax machine. Do something else. Just don't fly out there for a business trip. We're shutting down the airport. We're shutting it down. And then we can demolish all those planes and do something else with the metals. We can make solar panels and wind farms with the aluminum. Shut it down. Gut it. Fuck it. We're in a controlled demolition. We're on a war footing. That's what we're doing now. Of course, we're not actually doing that, right? I already told you. We're not going to do any of this. And if you're listening to this, you're thinking, fuck, he's crazy. He's like the Unabomber. What is wrong with this guy? No, I'm a scientist. I'm an engineer. I know what it takes. If you're going to do a controlled demolition, you're going to try to save as much as you can. That's what you're going to have to do. And the first thing to go is Mickey Mouse, Disneyland. Okay, just shut it down. The international airports, shut them down. Shut them down. Done. You're done. Your whole industry is done. Manufacturing airplanes, yeah, you can stop doing that. You want to manufacture some shit? Why don't you manufacture solar panels? Why don't you use all that aluminum that you've got laying around to make aircraft? Why don't you use that to make windmills? Yeah, make us some windmills. We need about a bazillion of them. Okay. 20% of our electricity today, that may be a global average, so maybe different than that elsewhere, is electricity. 20% of our, let me state that differently. 20% of our energy consumption today is electricity. The rest of it is liquid fossil fuels. And those are used for things that we currently use liquid fossil fuels for almost exclusively, like transportation, flying and driving and trucks and the whole thing. Also agriculture. We don't do agriculture with electricity. We can process food with electricity, but where's the food come from? It comes from a field. And there's a big tractor, pulls a plow. And there's seeds, and there's fertilizer, and there's pesticides, and all that's fossil fuels, right? So we'll have to figure out another way to do that. We're doing a controlled demolition. So we can't have great big huge fields. I mean, you've got a $150,000 John Deere tractor out there pulling a plow that's 40 feet wide, and one immigrant Mexican can drive that tractor up and down that field all day, and it's ready for seed, right? That's how we do it today, but that's fossil fuels. The tractor was made with fossil fuels. The Mexican goes to work with fossil fuels. The tractor uses diesel, fossil fuel, right? It's all fossil fuels. It's all everything. Everything in a modern farm is fossil fuels. Milking the cows, all of it. Now, if you could convert all of that to electricity, if John Deere could come up with a way to do all that with electricity, well, okay, that's interesting. Maybe that's part of the controlled demolition. John Deere recognizes, the corporation John Deere recognizes, oh, wow. So diesel is going to be $20 a gallon in 5 years. Okay, well, that pretty much blows a hole in the center of our business model. So I guess, boys and girls, we have to figure out how to till fields with electricity, because there's not going to be any diesel and it's going to cost too much money. So let's reinvent our tractors. Let's reinvent our farming methods. We maybe don't need tractors. Maybe we need small little robots that pull tiny little plows and they just plow all day and all night. And pretty soon, hey, you didn't need one guy in a big cab with 40-foot wide plow. No, you just needed a bunch of these little bots that run on electricity, go charge themselves, and go back out and work the field again. And they work all night. They work all day. And pretty soon, your thing was tilled with little electric vehicles. And you had 40 of them, and they just go up and down the rows, tilling the things, all electricity. Wow. And then, of course, the farmer has to have solar panels, right? Because he's got all these electric tractors. He has to have his own solar panels. So he's got his own solar farm. So that's also part of the controlled demolition. We have to go to these fields, find these farmers, give them an acre of solar panels, and so they can charge their fleet of little electric tractors that are plowing their field for them, all autonomous. Oh, but we don't have autonomy. Okay. So now we have to develop part of our controlled demolition. We need artificial intelligence that can, control these vehicles, and we need software, artificial intelligence software to manage the crops in the planting season, and the harvesting and the transportation, and where the food is processed. We're going to have to figure that out too, because there can't be people there. Why aren't there people there? Well, because they can't get to work. These factories are 20 miles outside of town, and now people can't get to the place to work because of fossil fuels. It's $20 a gallon for fossil fuels, and they can't get there. And if they could get there, they don't even have cars anymore. Okay, they don't have cars. They don't have access to these fuels. How are they going to get to the thing? Well, we could just create a small village around the place where they process the foods. We could create a village. Well, that's a thought. And then their commute is just you walk into the factory and you walk out and you go home. That's a thought. Would people live like that? Well, if that's how they live and they don't die, well, then I guess that they'd be happy to do that. Then the farmer with his profits feeds the people, houses the people, provides everything they need, and they can work on his processing plant. That sounds terrible. That sounds awful. That sounds like no way to live. We're having to figure out how to live without fossil fuels. And if you're going to process your food in some factory somewhere with 100 people picking through the beans, trying to find the bad ones, well, then that's what you have to do. Well, we could do that with artificial intelligence. We don't have to have 100 people in there picking the bad beans out of the conveyor belt. Okay, well, you can have a machine do that. Well, then what do you do with those 100 people? What's their life going to look like? Well, since they're immigrants, I guess we could send them back to Mexico penniless. Yeah, you could do that. You certainly could do that. Are you willing to do that? This is a controlled demolition. You got to figure that out. You going to do that? And what in your comfortable suburban life prepared you for any of this? Nothing. Nothing could prepare you for any of this. Politicians are cowards and nest feathering rat bastards. Besides, they're not going to touch this. They're not going to touch this. They are not going to touch this. You'll get no leadership from them. None. Zero. You get negative leadership. They'll lie to you and tell you it's not a problem. You'll get the worst kind of leadership from these fuckers. You will get the worst conceivable leadership from these people. They will lead you like the Judas goat leads the flock to the slaughterhouse. The politicians are going to be like the Judas goat, leading the rest of the flock to slaughter. Look it up. Judas goat. Look it up. It's a thing. I didn't make that up. Look up Judas goat. It's a thing. People know how to do this. And they would rather employ techniques like a Judas goat rather than trying to solve the problem. They're not going to do it. So when people say, well, I don't know, it seems like giving up on fossil fuels is just really fraught. It's just so many problems, and it would cause, my lifestyle would probably go down the shitter if I didn't have fossil fuels. I mean, I really enjoy my trips to Las Vegas, my annual twice a year, maybe trip to Las Vegas and take in a show, right? And do some gambling. I really need that in my life. And the flights are so cheap, and, and I just, no, I'm not going to participate in this. That's what we're going to get. I don't want to participate. That's what we're going to get. We're not going to get a controlled demolition. Now, if you did try and you did wrangle enough people to do this, and if maybe there was a miracle and people saw the light and they said, "Wow, we need a controlled demolition." Is that what we're talking about? We're going to talk about that? Okay, let's do it. If a miracle happened and people were willing to do this, what you could have is a different world that doesn't operate on fossil fuels. Doesn't operate on fossil fuels. Now, you can't do the things that today are reliant on fossil fuels. Maybe you could save some of them, right? You could do some big government funded project and try to figure out electric tractors and solar farms where the farms are. And you could, throw money at it, right? Or at least innovate a little bit, or, maybe, and then you could have modern agriculture, but maybe you can't. Maybe it just turns out we just can't do that on a short time frame, and maybe that's generational change, changing farmers from diesel to electric, and having solar farms everywhere that there's a farm. It's generational change, 30, 60 years, and we don't have that kind of time, so we don't do it. All right, so we do what we can. You figure out what you can do. It's triage. I had a video earlier about that. You have to do triage. There's the things that are just, you can't do them, so you just don't. You don't even try, and you leave them over here, where you might come back to them and reevaluate. Maybe we could do that. I mean, didn't look like we could do that. Like, this was DOA, but maybe we could do that. So you put it over here in the discard pile and you say, okay, maybe we can do this. And then there's also triage, things that you just don't have to worry about, right? People can figure this part out. This is pretty low impact. So we lose fossil fuels, but this over here, this pile over here, these will be fine without fossil fuels. People can figure this out. And then there's the things in the middle. And it's hard to say even which of the three piles is the biggest. It could be that the pile in the middle, the things that you might be able to save and would like to save, but it's going to take a lot of effort and sacrifice to save them. That pile might be the biggest pile, right? The things that are going to be fine without fossil fuels, okay, that could be a really tiny pile. And the things that are dead on arrival, driving, flying, modern agriculture, okay, that's all done. Those things are gone. Bury them, say a prayer, they're finished. Okay, that could also be a small pile. And then the stuff in the middle, which is life, most of your life, right? Yeah, you have a computer, you have the internet, you turn on a light, you can cook food, right? You have a refrigerator, you have appliances. There's some kind of manufacturing to make these things, right? Your life, your entire fucking life. And not even your job. Okay, that's gone. Businesses, global economics, global supply chains, that was DOA. That's over here in the dead on arrival. That shit's not going forward at all. So how does your life, which is everything you care about, which is everything you and I would talk about, if we sat down over coffee and hashed this out, it would be everything you eat, everything you drink, everything you wear, the house over your head, the water coming in for the tap, the electricity coming in for the lights themselves, okay? And the sewer going out to be treated. Everything about your life, your daily life, food, clothing, shelter, protection, okay, some means of exchange for money or something. Everything about your life is this big pile in the middle, and you would like to save as much of that as you can. And that, if you and I were to sit down and have this conversation, that would be the topic. That's all we would talk about. That's all we would talk about. And the conversation would begin with, well, okay, without fossil fuels, I've said this many times on this channel. It's a refrain, okay? It's a constant throughout my videos. Without fossil fuels, however that happens, on the day after or 3 days after, what you will see in the world without fossil fuels, the world will appear to you suddenly to have the following features. Without fossil fuels, you will have no driving, no flying, no movement of goods, no movement of money, and no jobs. That's how it is. You can't have those things. And you'll say, wow, that's my entire life. No, that is not what keeps you from dying. What keeps you from dying is food, clothing, and shelter. And I didn't put that in the list of the 5 things you can't have without fossil fuels. You can have clothing, you can have shelter, and you can have food, but that's a different kind of life without fossil fuels. You are suddenly focused not on Disneyland, which, by the way, we dynamited, right? You're not focusing on Disneyland anymore, or your entertainment, or your privileges. You're focusing on food, clothing, shelter. And you can have those without fossil fuels. You probably have a home right now. Maintenance is kind of an easy thing to do. And maybe future generations will build their homes out of, who knows, mud bricks. I don't even know. But we can figure that out without fossil fuels. You can have food without fossil fuels because you can, you have your land, you have maybe have some water. That would be important. We would want the cities to keep providing this civilized thing we call tap water. We would like that. Can we do that without fossil fuels? Let's figure that out. Okay. That's in this middle group of things where we could figure it out if we knew we had to. And we'd have to really apply ourselves to this to make sure that the taps keep working, because you're going to need the taps to grow food. So, and water conservation is a good thing. And capturing rainwater. There's we could brainstorm just water. We could probably spend an hour and a half just brainstorming water. How to have water to your home, how to have water in your community. Maybe we don't transport water 800 miles to get it to your community. Maybe it's all local. Maybe you have local wells. I had a well on my property when I was growing up as a child. We had a well. But if everybody has a well, then that's going to, okay, well, there you go. You're going to have a problem. Can you manage that problem? People pumping the aquifer dry. Can we manage that problem? Can we conserve? I don't know. Let's talk about it. It's a controlled demolition. Let's talk about it. So you can have food, clothing, shelter. Man, that's nothing. You're offering me nothing. I'm giving up fossil fuels to what? To save the unborn gay whales, and you're giving me nothing. You're giving me food, clothing, and shelter. No, I'm giving you a chance to survive. That's what the controlled demolition is about. Is saving as many people as you can. How do you think they got off the Titanic? It was a controlled demolition. Line up over here, women and children first, and get these boats down and do it correctly and get the boat away from the ship. Thank you. The next boat, it was a controlled demolition. The fact that they saved anybody, even one person, was signs of a controlled demolition. They knew what they were doing. They'd never done it before, but there were policies, protocols, and of course there were lifeboats, and there were people who knew how to operate the lifeboats, and the lifeboats were designed to float. And they probably even had some little bit of food and water in them and a bunch of other things. Okay. And so controlled demolition, get the people on the boats, put the boats in the water, get the boats away from the ship. Next. Okay. Controlled demolition. And trying to save people. We're not trying to give them more dessert. We're not trying to get them to New York City anymore. Get them on the boats. Get them off this ship. The ship is going down. Controlled demolition. Okay. That's what you're going to do. Why are you doing that? To save as many people as possible. We're choosing a controlled demolition to save as many people as possible, not to get them to New York, not to, give them their money's worth, not to get them, back on the food cart, get them on the ship, get them in the boat, get them down in the water, get the boat away from the ship, and controlled demolition. So if we're going to do a controlled demolition because of global heating and give up on fossil fuels, you're not going to have driving, flying, movement of goods, movement of money, and a job. And so if that's a problem for you, let's figure that out, because we have to save you. We're trying to save you and your family and your neighbors, and try to save as many people as possible. That's the point. That's the point. That is the point. Not to make your life wonderful and you're going to go to Disneyland 3 times a year instead of 4. Trying to shut this thing down. All the parts that have to have fossil fuels are DOA. So we don't have those anymore. How does that affect you? Does that affect your job, your whatever? You need food, clothing, and shelter to survive. Food, clothing, and shelter. And there's a bunch of other things you'd like to have. You'd like to have tap water. You'd like to have electricity distribution. You'd like to have modern communications, right? What, cell phones? You like cell phones? You like the internet? Do you? Well, you're not going to have that. That's a distributed system. It has to be maintained all these other places. Are they maintaining their part? Are they maintaining the server farm? Are they keeping the lines up? When the lines go down, do they put them back up? Who's doing the maintenance? You got to figure all that out. Figure it out. Because if you don't figure it out, you won't have it. Things you cannot have are driving, flying, movement of goods, movement of money, and jobs. You can't have those things. Well, I have to have those things. You can't have those things. I don't care what you think. You can't have those things because they're dependent on fossil fuels, and you can't have fossil fuels, and you have to give it up. You have to get to the lifeboats, get the boat out over the side of the ship, get the lifeboat down into the water, get the lifeboat away from the ship. Now, those people are saved. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to save your sorry ass. We're trying to save your privileged ass, okay? And as many asses as we can save. Controlled demolition. Get on the fucking boat. Shut up about your ticket. Shut up about your privilege. Just shut up. Just basically, just shut your mouth. Just shut your mouth and get on the fucking boat. Get down on the water. Get away from this ship. The ship is going down. Shut the fuck up. Get out on the lifeboat or die. We're doing a controlled demolition here. Help us or just get out of the way. Go back to the bar. Get drunk. The rest of us are trying to save ourselves. That's the nature of this discussion. It's going to be terrible. Nobody got on the Titanic to go to New York at record speed and record luxury, thinking they were going to halfway across end up in a lifeboat. No one wanted that. And when you come off the lifeboat, you look like shit. Your clothes are wet. You know, you've lost a shoe. Your hair is bedraggled. And, you know, you've been crying for 6 hours and you're starving and you shit in your own pants and you're embarrassed and you're humiliated. But you know what else you are? When they pull you out of that lifeboat and put you on another ship, you know what else you are? You're alive. You're alive, and you got another day to deal with this shit show. And that's a controlled demolition. It's not there to make you look beautiful and make sure you have the right makeup all the time from that exclusive provider. The whole point of a controlled demolition is to get you off of this dumpster fire into another conveyance and away from here so that you can be, well, whatever the rest of your life is. Nobody bought a first class ticket on the Titanic to end up in a lifeboat. Well, that's where we're at right now. You've all got your first class ticket. I mean, if you're watching this video, you got the first class ticket. You may not think so. You may think that your life is shit, but I'm telling you, if you're watching this video on this computer or that cell phone or that laptop or whatever your situation is, you've got internet feed and you've got lighting and you've got power and you've got all this equipment. If you're doing that, then you have a first class ticket. It doesn't feel like it. You got a first class ticket. So I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you. You got a first class ticket on a ship that is going down. And I don't want to hear about your privilege. And I don't want to hear about your expectations. And I don't want to hear about, I paid for something more than this. I didn't pay to be on a lifeboat. I paid to have a first class berth all the way to New York and get off with perfect hair. That's what I paid for. Yeah, well, that's not what you're going to get. Because today we're having a controlled demolition and you're going to get your sorry ass into that lifeboat, or you can go back to the bar and drink yourself blind. We don't really care. Because if you don't want to sit on the lifeboat, there's someone else right behind you in line who's going to jump right at that opportunity. So get your sorry ass and your privilege back to the bar, drink yourself into a stupor, and you won't even know you're drowning. That's your solution. That's your solution because you can't face that this isn't going to work. We want you to self-select to be on the DOA pile over here. The rest of us are going to try and figure this out. That's a controlled demolition. That's a controlled demolition. Man, that sounds like a fucking nightmare. That sounds like a Stephen King novel, right? Why not? Why don't we just make this into a Stephen King novel and have you know the cast of thousands into the world? No driving, no flying, no movement of goods, no movement of money, no jobs. That's a horror show. Titanic doesn't hold a candle to this. The tragedy that half the people on the ship went down with the ship, that doesn't hold a candle to this. And signing up for a controlled demolition means you're going to end up floating around in the dark with a few other people that are just as terrified and embarrassed as you are. And some people are going to have trouble with that. I don't want to abandon the ship. Figure it out and make it work. Do something. Or I'll just drink myself blind and go down with the ship. There are people who will make that decision. But that's how we get to a controlled demolition. People have to make hard choices. And the ones that don't want to participate, they can go down with the ship, I guess, because they also are not going to have their driving and their flying and their movement of goods and their movement of money and their jobs. Well, but if they're rich, they will. No, they won't. Because all that collapses without our current way of doing things. Our current global supply chains collapse very quickly. We've already seen a little bit of that. We've had a dry run. We know how this shit works. COVID-19 taught us some things. You know, we got to watch. Well, that looks bad. Ooh, look at that one over there. And that happened too. How interesting. Nice little dress rehearsal. No, they're not going to have their privilege. They're not going to have anything. They, if you just want to go back to the bar and drink yourself blind, then when you sober up, you're going to find out you also have won the negative lottery, and you don't have driving, and you don't have flying, and you don't have movement of goods, and you don't have a movement of money, and you don't have a job. Congratulations. Except you're on a sinking ship, and the rest of us got over here into lifeboats, and we're floating away and happy to be alive. Be in denial all you want to. We have to do this. We have to do this. We have to do this. And people are waking up to the fact that something's wrong. Something's really bad. Maybe this isn't a hoax. Maybe this global heating thing, maybe this is real. Maybe they were right. Maybe those scientists aren't a bunch of stupid nerds, don't know how to party. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're not a bunch of killjoys and doomers and working the system for grants or whatever. Maybe they're right. Maybe they've been telling us the truth all along. Maybe I'll wake up one day and I think, wow, this is the truth, I guess. It's 120 degrees outside today. I've never seen that before. Oh, they say it'll pass. It's only for a week. A week? Really? 120 degrees outside for a week? Really? We're doing that? Well, that sucks. So I guess maybe this global heating thing is real. Yeah, maybe it is. What are you going to do? Go back to the bar and drink yourself blind? Some people will do that. The rest of us want an option. It's called controlled demolition. We understand. We are going to, very shortly, we are going to understand the left, right, and center. We are going to understand that we have to stop burning fossil fuels. Simple as that. No other solution. Maybe there's a solution, 100 years out with enough innovation and enough unicorn farts, we'll figure this out. But right now where we are, there's no solution. Okay. Maybe 70 years ago, if we'd started working on a solution today, we might have a solution in place and we'd all be, phew, well, that was a close call. 70 years ago, they called that right. It took us 70 years to make the changes we had to make. And, now we got food, clothing, shelter, and some people still have jobs and the rest that don't are still fed and clothed and they're doing pretty well. And they raise their families and, no one's really suffering. No one has as much privilege as they used to have, but that was kind of sucky anyway, right? Who needed those fuckers? So we don't have quite as much privilege, but most of us are still alive and we have good things, right? We have some nice things. We don't have, 4 times a year to Disneyland, but hey, Disneyland, whose idea was that anyway? That's just another corporation. Don't need them. Don't need them. And we don't have stock markets anymore. Who cares about that? There's only like 1/10 of 1% of the people ever cared about that. And there's no money and we do everything with exchange or barter or script or wampum or something else. But hey, it works. I can get the things I need. And, I got a garden in my backyard and, I have 2 families living in my house now, but hey, they're nice people and they help with the gardening and the kids are so cute. And it was all part of a controlled demolition. But the only way we can have those things today, 2024, is if we started that work 2 generations ago, 60 years ago, right? 50 years ago, maybe 50, probably 60, maybe 70, a long time ago, all right? But we didn't. So now what can we do? We can do a very, very accelerated controlled demolition, very tight wind down of our dependency on fossil fuels, very strict, very destructive wind down of fossil fuel consumption. 5% for a couple of years and then 20% for a few more years after that, and then just bang, turn it off. You got 5 years. We gave you 5 years to accommodate. You had the schedule right in front of you. You knew what the price of gas was going to be every single year as a minimum after that. And we telegraphed everything that was going to happen. We started preparing people to do gardening. We started preparing local farming in communities, tearing down buildings, tearing up the asphalt, getting to the soil, repairing the soil because it's been dead under asphalt for 100 years. And, we did all this work. We had 5 years to do it. Got everybody off of fossil fuels, terminated all of our use of fossil fuels, got everybody hyper local. They were growing their own food in their backyard, in their front yard, in the field across the street. And they had all the tools they needed. And we had electricity and we had flowing water and we had sewer treatment. And we managed to pull it together. We had 5 years to do it. We pulled it together. We innovated. We got Elon Musk in there. We got Jeff Bezos in there. We taxed the fuck out of them, took their money, and they helped us. They helped us figure this out. Controlled demolition. We had 5 years to do it. We brought down the fossil fuel consumption. We brought it down to zero, actual zero, not net zero, not close to zero, zero. Zero was the number. None. Go to the service station, nothing in the tank. Zero. Zero. Controlled demolition. Every year it got more expensive. Every year there was less of it. You all knew. We had the PSA up on the bulletin boards. Next year, the price of gasoline is going to be at least $10 a gallon. You knew that was coming. No need to storm the Capitol. If you don't like it, what? Kill yourself? I don't know. Because this is what we've decided to do as a community. In 5 years, we're going to tear this down. We're going to tear this thing down. And while we're tearing it down over here on this side, we're going to be building something else up to replace it over here. And at the end, the thing that replaces it over here has no driving, no flying, no movement of goods, no movement of money, no jobs, no movement of people. Everybody's where they're supposed to be with who they're supposed to be with. And they've got plenty of work to do. They have to garden every single day. They have to manage their animals every single day. They have to get into community groups and decide what we're going to do next, what we're going to plant, what we're going to harvest, who's going to harvest it, how we're going to harvest it, what else do we need in our community. Start a list. We need this. We need that. We need something else. We need a nurse. We need another teacher. We need an obstetrician. Whatever we need. Figure this shit out. People talking all the time among each other. What are you okay? What do you need? Do I have something I could give you? Do I have something I could share? I've got a spare room. I've got a spare bunk and a bunk bed. You got too many teenagers at your table? Give me one of your teenagers. Send them over here. We'll put them up in a bunk. We'll feed them. We'll put them to work. They're our responsibility now. We could do this. We could do this. We could have a controlled demolition. We could do this, but we won't. We won't. We won't do it. I could figure it out. I know exactly what we need to do. I'm actually writing a short story about what it's like. And in my short story, they do a lot of the work of deciding in 100 days. They don't do all the work, but they do all the deciding, that the recognition that this is now the landscape, the recognition of we don't have this anymore. The recognition is that cannot happen. That won't help us. We can't rely on this other thing. This other stuff is gone. This is in the dead on arrival pile. And there's a couple of things we want to really save. We're going to work really hard as a community to make sure that we have this part in the middle. We're going to work at this. This is going to be our focus. What could we save if we got on it? That's 100 days. 100 days. That's what the story is about. That's what it's called. It's been 100 days. It's about half done. I have a couple of stories I'm working on, and that's just one of them. But, the problem is, and this happens a lot with my stories, the problem is it's less fiction every single day. It's less fiction with every passing day. I need to get it published so that it's just not a documentary. That I can publish it as fiction, speculative science fiction. That would be nice. It's fiction. Yeah, it's fictional, people. Maybe you might want to read it to kind of know what you're up against, but it's fiction. Except next year, it won't be. Or maybe even this summer, it won't be. We're over 2 degrees C above pre-industrial baseline. We're at 2 degrees C above. We have a 2 degrees C anomaly staring us in the face. That's not going to go down well this summer. That's going to be a dumpster fire. That's going to be a big problem. 2 degrees C above baseline. Yeah, well, you better get your shit wired up tight. Your community better have cooling centers to start with. And a lot of electricity to start with. You better have copious access to electricity and cooling centers for this summer. Just to start with. Anyway, I could rant on this. We need to control demolition. We need to make that decision right now. If you're on the fence about this, you better start thinking about that. This Titanic is going down, and the only solution for most of us is to get the fuck off. Okay? It's going to be painful. It's going to be disappointing. It's going to be embarrassing and humiliating. You're not going to get your money's worth. You're just going to have to take a chance and just get on that lifeboat and float away. You got to get away from this. It's a controlled demolition. That's what it's called. Getting away from this and surviving it requires a controlled demolition. Demolish your expectations. Just give them up. Just give up. Accept it. This is what's happening now. And if you need another nudge, in about 6 months, you're going to have plenty of nudges. And what you need to think about going forward is, that's right. Controlled demolition. We got to make decisions. Because if we don't decide and we just keep going forward, it's going to be bad. If we just keep going forward, that means everybody goes down on the ship. No one got to a lifeboat. The mortality is going to be painful if everybody stays on this ship and everybody goes down. The uncontrolled demolition, you see. No controls, no recommendations, nobody changing their plans. Everyone goes down with the ship. How's that supposed to work out when everyone's on the bottom of the Atlantic? How's that supposed to work out? What do you call that? They had lifeboats. They didn't get in them. No one tried to save themselves. No one accepted that food, clothing, and shelter during a catastrophe, food, clothing, and shelter looks pretty good. Okay. They wouldn't accept it. They wouldn't demolish Disneyland. They wouldn't get rid of the fossil fuels. They wouldn't stop driving. They wouldn't stop flying. They didn't do anything. They just stayed bellied up to the bar and drank themselves blind and went down with the ship. That's what's probably going to happen. That's what's probably going to happen because they don't want to choose. They choose not to choose. They're disengaged. They won't even know what happened. I mean, if you're drinking yourself blind at the bar because the ship is sinking and you just don't want to be engaged with that whole dumpster fire and you're going to drink yourself blind, well, then you have diminished capacity. You couldn't choose. You couldn't choose not to choose. You couldn't choose to choose. You couldn't do anything. You were drunk. You're blind drunk. Vomiting on yourself. You just went down with the ship. That's what a lot of people will do. They will prefer that. They'll actually say, I'm not going to change anything. I'll just drink more. That'll be a choice. People will choose that. Other people will choose violence. Other people will choose a paranoia and conspiracy theories and geospatial lasers and all that kind of crap. Some people will choose to just lose their minds, just completely lose their minds. And if you lost your mind, then you can't participate in what's happening. You've lost your mind. You're living in a parallel universe, and you can't choose. You can't choose anymore to not burn fossil fuels, and you can't choose to get to a lifeboat, and you can't choose to save yourself, and you can't choose to float away, and you can't choose to live another day. You're incapacitated. You're just eaten alive with conspiracies, and you're gonna live your life the best life you can. And anyone tries to stop you, then you've got a shotgun, and you're just gonna go forward, and you're just gonna go down with the ship. That's it. That's the non-choice choice, to go down with the ship. You don't have to choose anything. Just go down with the ship. There will be entire communities, entire cities, entire nations that just go down with the ship. There are 8,000 million humans. I have a fair amount of math that suggests that after this is done, out of 8,000 million humans, 8 billion humans, out of 8,000 million humans, there will be 80 million humans. I'll save you the math. That's 1% of the current population. 1%. Easy to derive that figure. Very easy. Very easy. That 15 minutes of narrative, and I can convince you that 1% is what's probably going to survive. And by the way, before I sign off, 1% survival rate is what would have happened with the Titanic had no one got to the lifeboats. There would have been 1% of the crew and passengers that would have just randomly found themselves surviving. 1%. They would have randomly found themselves pitched off the deck into a lifeboat. Okay, that 1% of the population would have accidentally ended up in a lifeboat. 1% of the population would have accidentally found themselves floating on a table or something. 1% of the population on the Titanic would have found themselves picked up by a neighboring ship that came to rescue them. 1%. Well, there's a couple thousand people on the Titanic. 1% is what, 30, 40 people? Yeah, that's about what you would have expected if everyone went down with the ship. 30, 40 people would have randomly survived it. Just on accident, got thrown into a lifeboat, found themselves in a lifeboat. And they're like, what am I doing in a lifeboat? Well, the Titanic is gone and you got randomly thrown into a lifeboat somehow. 1% of the people on the Titanic would have survived at random, on accident, just completely on accident, in an uncontrolled demolition. With a controlled demolition, which is what they opted for, they got a bunch of people on lifeboats. The lifeboats floated away, and that's the equivalent of food, clothing, and shelter without the Titanic. Are we going to choose a controlled demolition? My right up front guess, with near certainty, I'll say it, absolute certainty, is that we will not. That we will instead opt to lose everything and hoped to be in the 1%. Who just randomly got thrown into a lifeboat against their will, or randomly fell off the ship drunk and landed in a lifeboat, and 1%, and they survived. And people say, wow, you were lucky. And you're like, no, I was drunk. Okay. That's not luck. I was just drunk out of my mind because the ship was sinking. I randomly fell in the ocean and landed in a lifeboat. How could that have happened? Yeah, 1%. Or are we going to settle for that? Or are we going to deliberately put people on lifeboats and push them away from the boat with food, clothing, and shelter? And yeah, of course, it's more than 1% at that point. But that's a controlled demolition. That is deciding to do this. We are here. We're going to figure this out. We're going to figure this out. We're going to give up on the things we can't have, and we're going to keep the things we can have. And we're going to figure out this pile in the middle where if we work at it, we can do this. And that's the equivalent of a lifeboat. Do they exist? If they don't exist, build them. What do they look like? What do they have to have? For the Titanic, a lifeboat is just a little tiny boat, right? All it's reproducing is buoyancy. It's just reproducing dryness and buoyancy, and maybe there's some food or water or something on the lifeboat, and hopefully you get rescued in 6 or 8 hours. Right? So what's the equivalent in civilization? Tiny little pieces of civilization, little groups of people. And if we do that, if you get lots of little groups of people to be okay-ish, and they got their local food, and they've got their local water, and they've got their local healthcare, and they've got their local school, and they've got their local birthing center, and they've got their local library, and they've got their local agriculture, and they've got their local seed stocks, and they've got their everything, right? Trying to reproduce this huge civilizational behemoth in little tiny little local pieces, just enough to get by, the equivalent of lifeboats. Well, then we'll be able to get more than 1% of the people away from this wreck. Maybe. I mean, nothing's guaranteed, right? We could all still die. We could omit something. We could not realize we needed something, and then everyone omitted it at the same time, and then everyone suffered from it at the same time, and everyone died at the same time because of this one thing. What is the one thing? I don't know. Water, right? Electricity. I don't know. The one thing. What's the one thing that we're going to omit that's going to get us all in the end? I don't know. Could happen. Well, I bet it doesn't. I bet if we all get to the lifeboats, enough of us will survive that. Hey, we did pretty good. We did really well. We could be proud of ourselves. But it's called a controlled demolition. It's still a demolition. You're still going to have to deal with no driving, no flying, no movement of goods, no movement of money, no jobs, no Disneyland, no Amazon Prime, no theaters, no gambling, no traveling to Vegas, no skiing in Tahoe, no electric cars, no manufacturing, no supply chains, and no Disneyland. First and last on the list. And Disneyland is a metaphor for bellying up to the bar on the Titanic, drinking yourself blind, vomiting all over yourself, and going down with the ship. That's Disneyland. That's the first thing we got to shut down. Yeah, forget that. Close the bar. You got to get onto a lifeboat. Anyway, that's my rant. Jump. Do it. Jump, monkey. I don't want to have to bail out your sorry ass. I want you bailing out my sorry ass.